I was hoping for a lot longer than that, but oh well.
Wow.
Hope you don't mind, Dugald. I got you streaming on the YT.
Oh, thank you.
On the Decon channel.
Benny is the master behind the scenes.
They're calling me the puppet master lately, and I don't know how.
Oh no!
I saw that.
Yeah, I don't know how.
He's the puppet master. Depends on the mood you're in. Do you feel more Dom or bottom that day?
Right.
How's that racism? We were not being racist. We just
nobody made fun of him because his accent was really thick and his microphone was terrible.
He ran away, and we couldn't understand him. I just asked him.
I don't understand. Yeah, like
louder.
He improved his microphone when asked, and then he made a statement about not agreeing with something, and I said, "How can you disagree with something you don't know what it is?" Because he said he doesn't know what it is.
And then he ran. I don't understand what was racist. So somebody can explain it, because I don't.
I don't know. I think it's that pointer finger effect.
Was he a fragile white person? Most likely what it was. All right. Tap, share, do the things, guys. Let's try to get some more people. If we can't get somebody in the next 10 minutes, then I'm probably just going to call it quits, because there's not a lot of point of us just sitting here staring at me.
It's kind of nice to do on a Wednesday.
Yeah. The only reason I'm doing it tonight instead of my normal on Thursday is because I'm going to be driving to Chicago after work tomorrow. So I am not going to be. I could wait. Sorry, roommate. But yeah, I will not be around for my live. And I'm moving Saturday's live to Sunday when I get home.
I actually got to get going because I got to do some schoolwork. But thanks for having me on again. That was fun.
Appreciate you, Leo. Have a good one.
Yeah, you guys too.
No, oh, why does it say I'm labeled AI? That shouldn't be on. What the hell is that?
It did that right when we were talking. The last thing we said to Rose or whatever her name was.
Weird.
It popped up.
Weird. Anyway. All right, EJ, are you over 18? EJ? EJ? No. Okay. Okay. I guess we're just going to hang out for a little bit.
Have you guys heard about that big flub up that was going on with Pete Hegseth and all those
the
signal
chat?
Yeah. Oh my god.
If I hear one motherfucker complain about her emails.
Right.
Again.
But her emails.
Like, seriously, we cannot let this one go. Like, do not let them shove it, like, put it under the rug or anything, because they had her go on for what was like 11 hours. And they couldn't find anything. These guys, like, chatted.
She still got vilified for it. She still got vilified for it afterward, because it killed any chance she had of well, not any chance, but it killed a lot of the chance she had of becoming president the first time when she ran against Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Like, misogyny obviously was the biggest role in that, but still. And then obviously misogynoir was the problem here in this election.
It was just wild because, like, yesterday, everybody's like, "Oh, there was no confidential, nothing confidential was shared on this, like, basically Telegram." And then today, The Atlantic released the whole, like, transcript of the chat, like, everything, because they were like, okay, well, I guess if it's not confidential then or classified, then we'll just release the whole thing. And now they're all, like, walking it back.
I got somebody that came up on the live request invite thing that had the old not good term for Native Americans baseball team logo. Didn't they get rid of that?
Yeah. I don't know. Like, it's weird. Like, you shouldn't have a person as your mascot like that. I don't know that the term Indian is.
I try not to say it just because I usually get corrected when I do, so I just try not to say it.
I don't know. like.
It's either First Nations or Native Americans is what I get told, so I don't.
Yeah, I get that, but like, I think it's more about like the depiction
Maybe.
and using a people group as your mascot. Absolutely not. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm just talking strictly about like the word.
The word in it. Yeah, I get you. I feel
Yeah,
you.
like,
I get it.
there are, because I grew up next to a reservation. That was just like,
Yeah.
nobody like made any kind of distinction or correction or anything. It's just
It might be something they're just used to. I don't know.
What tribe were you near?
Tuscarora.
Oh, okay. I only asked because I grew up with a lot of the like Lakota Sioux.
Okay. Yeah, this was Western New York.
Okay.
So Shane in the comments, it's not about my hurt feelings. I don't really care. It's not about my feelings. I personally don't care what people prefer to be called.
Exactly.
I don't know. That's a weird thing about language.
He's a racist. Look at him. So yes, I am, but that does not make it a good thing.
So should I start saying buzzwords? American Constitution was not built on Christian morals. The Garden of Eden was just a fairy tale. Free will does not exist. Good or real Christians being apathetic is a very, very bad thing. There's no true Christians that I've ever met because none of them can define what a true Christian is.
Which is why I have this up here, because this is words you all use against each other.
Oh yeah, God's not real. God's a piece of shit. Jesus may not even have existed.
I want to talk to you about something.
Yeah.
It kind of just popped back into my head. Like the anti-LGBTness of the Bible, right? Mm-hmm. And I hear things like, and I get it, like the whole like, what was it, Leviticus or Deuteronomy? I forget, like 18:22, where it's like,
Leviticus, yeah.
Leviticus,
right? And like that, I could get as like a status thing. Like I've heard that argument. It makes enough sense to me. But like, if you look at something like Romans 1, like what is the kind of progressive Christian spin on that?
It was pederasty is what they really meant to be referring to, like
in Romans 1.
Yeah, because in the Greek and Roman times, like older men would have like younger boys that were like journeymen or whatever they call them. Like they were learning under them, but they would have like
apprentice.
Like an apprentice. Yeah, and they would have an emotional relationship with it. And then when they were picking, there was like a group of people at Yale. I think that's what that like 1948 documentary was about. Was that Romans 1 though? Maybe I'm trying to grab it.
No, I'm not seeing anything in Romans 1.
Look in the 20s. Mid-20s.
All right, 20.
But now I gotta look up in the Septuagint.
For God gave the diary and three her desire in the Bible's then. Females exchange natural intercourse or unnatural. It's the same way also for the males giving up their natural intercourse with females were consumed for their passionate desire for one another. Males committed shameless acts with males and received in their persons the due penalty of their error.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, I thought this was like the one that said like specifically the word homosexual in the New Testament. The New Testament ones are weird.
It doesn't really proclaim that you can't do it or that it's a sin. It does just say that God gave them over to dishonorable passions.
Well, I mean, it says the due penalty. Like,
no, true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But honestly, I don't like. I'm not of the community, so I'm definitely not the person to speak on this. But like,
yeah, I'm not.
I don't know. I don't get the desire to like give this kind of wiggle room.
I talked to Rabbi Hannah and if I can get hold of do we have any Christian clergy of some kind, or former clergy at least. I know we have a bunch of people who used to be, or used to be like in seminary, but not like.
So I am kind of with you on that one, Mac. Like I definitely just say like, yeah, the Bible's just anti-LGBT. Like I don't even try to like say like, you know, there's like a role part even in like the Leviticus part. I just say like blatantly, you know, it's just against it, and there's no like ground, there's no reason for it other than it just says it, you know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. For the wrath of this guilt of humankind was the heading of that whole thing.
Well, the shameless acts, I think, does refer to, I think they are like trying to go back to Leviticus when they're talking about the like, you know, perversions or whatever, shameless acts.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's referencing something.
Yeah.
But if I don't know if it like.
Let me ask my little AI bot that I fed the NRSV Oxford Annotated, and I gave it the Bart Ehrman intro to the New Testament PDFs. See what happens.
Right, Mona.
Oh, Monadic might know.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'd come in the room. I know you kind of asked, but I don't really kind of go out of my way to point out that I'm a biblical scholar. That's not my cup of tea. But the Levitical passage. These are what we call the clobber passages. This is what I've studied for quite some time, because not only am I a biblical scholar, but I'm an openly gay man. So I kind of had both scenarios here that worked in my advantage of studying this. But the Levitical passage refers to a marriage bed. So the word that's used in Hebrew refers to a married man not having relationship with another man in the marriage bed. So that's specific. It's very specific. It doesn't state that it's against Levitical law. It just states that it's against Levitical law when you're dealing with a relationship that is meant for procreation. But outside the bounds of that marriage bed, there's nothing saying that it's not allowed per se.
Is this 1822 talks about a marriage bed?
The word that's used is in it is representing. Let me find the Hebrew word that's used there.
Sochab or Mishkab? I guess Mishkab.
Mishkavet, right?
Yeah, Mishkab.
Yeah, I believe so.
Lying down, couch bed, active lying.
Yeah, the representation there is a marriage bed, so it's not just a bed. It's not just any bed. It's not just any bedding a man. It's bedding a man in the marriage bed. So that's specific. Now, as far as Romans is concerned, if you read it,
we don't have to speed run this. Where is that established?
By the use of the language that's used there, because it's not just there's different Hebrew words for bedding someone down or using, having a bed. There's different words and for that, and because of that this particular word that's used is representing of a marriage bed, or the bed that belongs to a married couple.
Is that the word that they're putting in the chat there? Kuwaiti?
I'll say that term in the
That's
Greek.
Yeah, that's Greek. So, no, that's not the word. I'm not near my lexicon, so I'm not near my lexicon, so I don't. Yeah. I can't pull it up, and I don't use Strong's Concordance, because Strong Concordance is full of mistranslations, simply because the guy who created it, Strong, was trying to translate it from a Christian perspective. So
yeah, I mean, it just circles back to the King James.
Right.
The Brown Driver
It does.
Briggs is a little more.
So then the as far as the Romans is concerned, the whole entire passage there in Romans deals with the fact that in the Roman kingdom at the time, historically, if you were a citizen of Rome, it was your obligation to make offerings to the gods. Okay, it didn't matter if you were Christian or you were not Christian. It didn't matter, and there was nothing that Paul said that he didn't want people. Because first of all, to not do it could potentially put them in legal and harm's way by not doing it. But what he is saying there is that when you go to the temple, there are options to offering to the gods. One of them is having relations with, and we're not just talking men, we're talking boys that lived in apartments, and women, by the way, that lived in apartments near the temple. That was their that was their job, to be offering, to be sexual offering. And so the issue there is that they didn't want you to do that. That was not the way to be. That wasn't. He listed all the different ways that an offering could be made, and he's saying these are the ones that you don't want it, that you're not to do. It had nothing. It had less to do with the fact that it was gay sex, or I'm sorry, don't want to use a word that's going to get banned. But anyway, it was less to do with what it was, and more to do with where it's being done and under what pretense it's being done.
So would it have been okay for a man to have sex with a woman in the temple?
Well, first of all, these weren't men that were at that. These were young boys that were in those apartments for offering. Right. And the reason is because because the offering to the gods had to be an offering of youth, because youth was something that innocence had to be taken, which in actuality it wasn't being taken, because many of these young boys were having that type of relationship over and over and over again. So it's not like they were, they were not previously taken. So that's the issue there. That also applies in Corinthians too, because Corinthians was also in the Roman kingdom. And so it had a lot to do with idolatry in and of itself.
I was there. It's true. I was there. Look at my name.
So it had to do with idolatry more than the actual relationships between male and male. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to even refer to Matthew. And the reason I'm going to refer to Matthew is because, do you remember the passage in Matthew where the Roman soldier, I cannot remember what type of soldier he was. It was a specific type of soldier he was listed as, came to Jesus to have his servant healed. Do you remember that story?
Yes,
So here's the thing about that. Anybody knows historically that if a man from Rome as a soldier was traveling with a young boy who was his servant boy, that boy was most likely, and Jesus would have known this too, most likely more than his servant boy. Mm. And especially for that servant boy, for that soldier to have hunted down somebody to heal his servant boy in the way that he did, meant that there was some sort of care for that person. That's not quite the norm. Yeah, it would have been the norm if they would have been traveling outside the bounds of Rome for a long period of time. Interesting. And so the thing is that Jesus would have known that. It wasn't anything that was a secret amongst the Jewish people that was the practice by any stretch of the imagination. And again, not only did he not mention in any other place in biblical text, but he didn't mention in that case either. In fact, he told his apostles that the Roman soldier knew him better than all of Jerusalem, and basically said that he would be as well to know him as any apostle would have. And yet he would have also known that the likelihood is that relationship between that servant boy and that soldier would have been of a specific nature. And did he condemn him for it? No. Did he heal the servant and say, go off and do that no more? No, he didn't. And those are historically well-known things that you can look throughout Roman history and Greco-Roman history and find that if a soldier is traveling with a servant, and if that servant is of the same sex, that it's very likely that there's a relationship there. Mm-hmm. Now, is it a relationship on the same level as maybe the relationship with whoever that person may have had at home in Rome? No, probably not. But that doesn't mean that wasn't happening while they were out.
Interesting. Rabbi Hanna, we're talking about specifically at this moment the little boy with the Roman soldier. Was that it? Or
this would have been in Matthew. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're specifically talking about right now.
And again, Jesus didn't make any mention of it anywhere in biblical text, and definitely didn't make any mention of it in that particular instance. And in fact, said that the Roman soldier was.
RTP, this is the plot to Brokeback Bible.
Yeah. But, I have a whole other issue with Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John anyway, because, they're pseudo-biographical anyhow. I can say maybe Luke's not the case, but if you look at the historical context of when each of those apostles died and and the dates, the window dates for the first book of those particular books being found anywhere in history, almost all of them fall upon the very time frame in which that apostle would have passed away. And what I think is what I think is happening there is because you had in the beginning of the Way of the group that was not called Christian at that point, they were called the Way after the council in Jerusalem. Many of them were what we call apostolic home churches. They were, the people who are following Matthew, people who are following John, the Joanites, people who are following, Mark. So you had, and so what would happen is, as these apostles had passed, their followers decided to write a pseudo-biographical book so that they didn't forget what was supposedly being told to them. However, it's not a firsthand. It's not written firsthand. This is secondhand account, and it's also secondhand account by people who are educated and who are former converts from the older Greek mythologies, because they were writing in Koine Greek, and none of the apostles would have been able to write in Koine Greek.
Interesting. You're welcome to stay up if you want to, but I do want to get some of these.
Sure.
Real, are you? Weren't you on Christina's live earlier?
Yeah, what's up, man?
All right, so you couldn't already know you were going to. All right.
Yes.
You want to pick one of the points to talk about, Real?
The science denial.
Okay. What do you want to say?
So, when you say science denial, you're saying that the Bible is not accurate when it comes to science?
I'm saying that, and I'm saying that Christians deny science as we know.
Yeah, but I believe that the Bible is science because of the evidence. Do you?
You can believe that, but that doesn't make it true.
Okay, do you believe that a lion and a tiger carry the same DNA?
They can mate. So yeah, sort of. They have similar DNA enough that they can actually mate.
But their
So-
offspring are sterile.
Have you ever heard of a liger?
The question. So the
Yeah,
question
their
is,
offspring are sterile.
Yeah, they're all straight. It's just like what is it? The donkey or the
Mules.
Mule, yeah.
so a lion and a tiger, they are cats, right? A lion is a cat, and a tiger is a cat. So they are created after their own kind,
No.
according to Genesis chapter 1, verse 24.
That
Yes.
doesn't care. That doesn't.
What does that mean?
Right.
It means that they are
The birds
created.
and the bats thing again.
It means that they are created after
That's a
their own kind.
Leviticus.
It
They
means
are
they're
cats.
what?
They are cats. Yeah,
So what?
It's a tiger and it's a lion,
So what?
but they are under the umbrella of being a cat. They are cats. So they
And?
created after their own kind.
And we're under the umbrella of being a great ape. What's your point?
You understand like taxonomy
Yeah,
and
kind is not a
Yeah.
biological term.
like do you like species, like kingdoms,
Family,
families,
class.
Yeah, exactly. Species is where you can have it's where it's like cut off to where you can't have interspecies relations and produce an offspring.
Right. At some point, the DNA has changed so much that it can't happen. So
Yeah, they are of the feline species, right?
So y'all believe in evolution?
I mean,
Believe?
it's all the most evidence for. So
Yes, it is. It is a belief.
Yeah, fine. Yes.
sure.
So you believe that, what's his name, Darwin?
No,
Darwin?
Darwin's not the standard for.
Yeah, he invented evolution. Next.
You never invented evolution.
Okay, he invented it. That doesn't mean anything. What's next?
Do you know, Real, that there's more evidence for evolution than there is for gravity?
I don't know.
I'm okay. You don't know. There is. There's more, and we understand how it works better than gravity.
So how does evolution work? Where did we come from?
Do you really want us to sit here and explain the entirety of evolution?
He doesn't.
That's why I'm asking. Like yeah.
Do you know what alleles are?
Say it again?
Have you heard of alleles?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, so they're marks in the DNA structure, and the evolution is a change in allele frequency in a population over time.
And by frequency, it doesn't mean vibrations.
Yeah, just means the number of times it occurs, right? So when these things happen, right, you have every instance of reproduction is a chance for a mutation. Sometimes those mutations are good and beneficial, and sometimes they're harmful, and sometimes they're neutral, right? But if a certain population starts to develop a mutation, and that leads to more success in mating and a more productive life and being able to care for your offspring, that is going to be more successful over time and is more likely to be spread throughout that population to a point that group will no longer be sexually compatible with the group that doesn't have that mutation, and that will be speciation.
Right.
Are you familiar with something called endogenous retroviruses?
You know he does.
So an endogenous retrovirus is a virus that leaves a mark on the DNA, and based on DNA progression, we can tell when a virus has been affected in affecting the DNA, so we can trace that back. And we know that some of the things that evolution has claimed that we are evolved from are where those are the animals that caught those endogenous retroviruses. And because of that, we know that we would have to be evolved from them if we have those same markers in our DNA that show that we had caught it at one point, we would have to be evolved from them. And those markers do exist in humans to know that those endogenous retroviruses are from our relatives.
So are you saying that we evolved from animals?
We evolved from lesser evolved beings. Yeah. If you depending on where you want to place those. I mean, it depends on where in the evolutionary chain how far back in the evolutionary chain you're going.
We are animals.
We are animals. We are part of the animal kingdom.
Apes.
Yeah, we are part of the animal kingdom. When we were talking about kingdom, phylum, so on and so forth, you know, that we are a part of that kingdom, animal kingdom.
Right. We're not insects. We are animals.
Right.
We're not plants.
That's hard. That's hard to accept, man, to be honest with you.
Why? But here's the thing, like, Real, I want you to hear this out. Like, seriously, listen. If I presented you with a unicorn that decided to make the universe, and that is a god, that is the god of creation, are you just going to accept that? No. It's the same thing when you talk about your God. You pretend like that sounds normal because that's the side of the fence you're on. But when you proclaim that this unseen, unknown, it can't interact with God, created everything, had this son, did all this dogma, all these angels, all these things, and then with no proof but a 2,000-year-old book that was put together by a whole bunch of people. You see what I'm saying? You're trying to tell me that things that we can see happening is not happening, and that's hard to accept. But this thing that sounds straight up out of a fantasy fiction book sounds perfectly normal and correct.
But you don't believe that the human body is an intelligent design? You believe that
No, it is not. Nobody who intelligently designs anything makes things this complicated, nor would they put the place where you derive sexual pleasure from the same place you shit.
And neither would they also put the same place where you swallow food as to where you breathe.
If that's the case, can I ask this question sincerely? Can anybody create a heart? Can anybody create a kidney?
Actually, we can in a lab.
Yes, we can.
Grow them on mice or mouses. Mice.
A human kidney.
That's the word.
That is not true.
Yes, they do.
Yes, it is.
They do. What do you mean it's not true?
It wouldn't matter if it's true or not.
So you actually telling me
it wouldn't
that
matter if it's true or not.
On mice.
The question doesn't get you.
We can actually manipulate. We can actually manipulate DNA. That's what's now called CRISPR, and that can actually be done. We can manipulate DNA. We have people are going to get stem cell treatments on all sorts of diseases currently right now.
What were you gonna say, Mac?
I'm saying it wouldn't matter even if you couldn't. It doesn't get you any closer to a god, right? Yeah. Nobody is claiming that man made man, so the question is kind of fruitless. It doesn't get you anywhere.
Mac's right, because even if you disprove every scientific thing there is out there, it still doesn't prove your God. It does it.
So there was never a beginning, is what y'all saying.
Nobody said that.
No.
But here's the thing.
I'm saying that.
Well, I don't believe in the beginning either, but on average, most people believe.
Why do we have time then?
I think time, space, matter, all of those things are eternal. They've always existed in some way or another.
The whole Big Bang theory has actually started to go out of fashion as far as research is concerned. What's happening now is you have this kind of the bang and then the fizzle, but then the fizzle is basically when you have particles or subatomic particles that are so far apart from each other that they don't rub against each other to create matter or heat. And then so they're floating in space so far separated from each other, so far separated out that the space becomes darkness. But at some point in that infinite nature of those subatomic particles, one becomes unstable, at which point everything sucks in again to that one unstable particle, and another big bang happens over again. And so all those spread out particles or subatomic particles collapse in on that one space where that one particle or subatomic particle became unstable. Right. And then the Big Bang repeats itself over and over and over again. And the belief is that space may be infinite, and that there are Big Bangs like that happening in different processes all throughout the infinite cosmos, and that because of that, it's always existed. There's never been a beginning and never been an end.
So I mean, that's just what we're talking about, real, is that like these are all things, and like Mac was saying, like I said before, no matter what you do, even if you disprove all of these things, still doesn't prove your specific God.
Well, I tell you what, let me go ahead and do some more research, and I definitely come back and have a conversation.
And I would also suggest that you do some research on the fact that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were not named Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John until 200 years after by Irenaeus. Also do the research that Origen, one of the forefathers of the church, taught reincarnation as part of religion, as part of the Christian religion until 600 when Justinian removed it. So you start to your doctrine starts, some of the doctrines of Christianity start to fall apart when you study the origins of the Christian faith altogether, and that may help you to understand how things were manipulated to make you to be and believe what you believe today.
So let me ask you a question. So what you are saying is that the full gospel is not historical evidence?
No, it's not. There is no historical evidence of Jesus. The only other text that has ever been referred to as historical evidence other than Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John would be the writings of Josephus. And we also know that Asclepius came later, hundreds of years later after Josephus, and manipulated that text and actually that very spot where Jesus is being referred to. You have other people that are referring to Jesus in other texts, such as a Roman soldier, a Roman general. I think it's Titurius, who. Titius, who basically, but here's the thing: he's not referring to it historically as far as him witnessing anything. All he's talking about is that this is what the Christians of his time claim. That's all he's talking about. So there is no place where there is firsthand account of Jesus existing anywhere.
What about Pliny the Younger?
For example, real, if Paul existed, he would have came around 70 years after Jesus supposedly was crucified.
Pliny doesn't mention Jesus at all.
I didn't hear you.
Pliny doesn't mention Jesus.
I know he doesn't mention, but he speaks about him.
He talks about.
Of course, he doesn't.
I talked about Harry Potter yesterday.
But talking about is mentioning, like,
right?
What?
Like, it's literally just. You're talking about people who wrote about these things, and all they did was record the history of what the Christians told them.
Yeah.
How many of these guys were alive at the same time as Jesus?
Like, have y'all ever put the full gospels to the test? Like,
yeah.
Yes.
Like actually, I'm talking about actually going to Israel and putting it.
You don't need to do that because you can go to the mass of. Because here's what happens. A lot of the Christians and a lot of mostly Christians, they go there and they fall for the rhetoric and the propaganda that they're sold to make money off of you. There's no real tomb to visit.
Right.
Sorry, there's not. It's just an empty tomb, but there's no proof that it was Jesus's. If they put anything on display, they're just telling you that's the significance of the area, which great, But that's not going to change anything that
we know that things like the Shroud of Turin are not possibly possible, because the thread count in the weaving of the Shroud of Turin would be hundreds and hundreds of years after it would have had to have been the Shroud of Turin. That they didn't have that capability of that weave at that time, and so that's fake. We know that's fake. We know that. We know that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, like I said, we know that those were pseudo-biographical texts. They were written after the apostles had passed away.
These are just things we know. These are things we suggest you go and research, though.
Right. And the Shroud of Turin is one piece, and the Bible specifically describes two.
Yeah.
Are y'all familiar with Simon Greenleaf?
Yeah, you brought him up earlier. Not convinced.
Yeah, I did.
Who was
Simon Greenleaf.
I've never heard of him.
Simon Greenleaf. He's a royal professor, and that was in 1833. And he put the Gospels to the test, and he said that he was accurate.
If we're going to quote some guy from 200 years ago,
okay, but here's the thing about Simon Greenleaf: he was not a scholar. He was a theologian. There's a difference between a scholar and a theologian. A theologian has a theology. A theologian has a theology that they wish to prove when they start out. They are looking to prove their own theology. So they are starting out with a bias at the very moment that they start.
That's not true. He wanted to disprove the Bible because he was an atheist.
It doesn't matter. Just because somebody was an atheist.
He found out that the full gospel was true.
Listen, Rio. Because no matter what happens, there are also other atheists who went there and put it to the test who didn't come across them short. The fact of the matter is, just because one person went and changed their beliefs supposedly doesn't mean it's real. You're got to give me evidence that it's real, not just because somebody went and changed their mind. You got to give me actual evidence. What made them change their mind?
And Greenleaf didn't look to try to change his idea of atheism. Where he was a professor at was a religious run school, a college that was run by a particular religion. If he had done exactly what you said and he had proved the Bible incorrect, he would have proved himself right out of a job.
Well, here's the thing. All you gotta do is read past the first paragraph, man. It says several evangelical books and websites portray Greenleaf as an atheist who set out to disprove the Gospels and claim that instead the evidence for Jesus' resurrection convinced him to become a Christian. Greenleaf was a devout evangelical Episcopalian, and no evidence exists that he ever doubted the truth of the Gospels.
Yeah. Like I said, he was a theologian, not a scholar.
They do that. They'd love to do that. They'd love to say, I was just like you guys. I used to be an atheist. I love it. I hated God too, and all that bullshit. It's like, dude, you aren't. They do that to make the story have a little extra punch.
I don't have any.
It's not there.
Yeah, I don't have any university to kowtow to, so I don't mind saying that as a scholar, I worked at the beginning as a theist, and then became a deist, and then became a pantheist, and then became a panentheist, and then became a monist atheist. I am now an atheist, but I'm a scholar. I'm still a scholar. And the reason I am an atheist is because I am a scholar. There's still people out there who still work for universities who can't claim their own atheism. Bart Ehrman can't claim his full atheism at this point. I can tell you he is, and he would never admit it. But I know him personally, and I can tell you that when he retires from going into teaching at universities, you will see a different Bart Ehrman than you see today.
Yeah, I've heard that same thing.
And so I'm going to tell you that there are other scholars who, because they make money, because that's their livelihood, there are certain things that they cannot say. And I don't have that. I'm independently wealthy. I have a husband who's independently wealthy. I don't need to worry about who I lecture with or how I lecture or who invites me or who doesn't invite me. So I can say today that I have proven myself an atheist.
Okay, let me ask you a question. What would convince you that God is real? Like, what would
It would have
convince
to be something tangible, something verifiable, something that everybody can see or experience that isn't just in your all's brain. Like, here's the problem, Real. Every single time somebody tells me they've done a faith healing, God has come to them and talked to them, a miracle has happened for them, they can never prove it outside of their own brain. They literally can only recount what they think they saw, or what they think they heard, or what they think they felt, and then they cannot ever back it up. And by now, after 2,000 plus years, this God, who is supposed to be almighty, all-powerful, and wants everybody to believe in him and have faith in him, refuses to do anything in the Bible that he promised to do. We were talking about this earlier. He promised you that if you ask for anything in his name with true belief, it would happen, no matter what. Healings, you could drink poison, you could, all these things you could do. And it would not affect you as a true believer, and you can't do those things.
That was for the Jewish people.
No, he was talking to his disciples. What are you talking about?
Yes, that was for the Jewish people only, not the Gentiles.
No, he was talking about people who believed in him. Those would be Christians by definition.
Yeah, it didn't say anything about the Israelites. It was saying if you are a true believer.
No, the gospel of the kingdom was for the Jews, because Jesus specifically said that he did not, during his earthly ministry, he said,
and you don't believe in Paul?
To the lost sheep of Israel.
You don't believe what Paul said then? Anything Paul said?
No, he only believes what Paul said.
Then why are you making this argument?
What did Paul say?
Paul said you're grafted in.
Yeah, Paul said you're grafted in, you're part of it. Like, this is your religion as well. He didn't differentiate between the Gentiles and the Israelites.
I'm going to give you an exercise. I'm going to give you a mental exercise, and I want you to think about this real for just a moment. I'm not saying that this is true. It's purely a mental exercise to make you question what you're thinking. But think about this. What did Paul do before he started his ministry? What was he? Do you know?
He was persecuting. He was persecuting the followers of the way.
He was persecuting those who were following the way, and he wasn't just persecuting them. He was making sure that they became imprisoned or unalived. Correct?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And under which two parties was he working for when he was doing that?
I believe it was the Pharisees and Sadducees.
The Romans and the Jewish hierarchy. Okay. So then my question to you then becomes, if the Jewish hierarchy didn't want to keep losing converts to this new form of Judaism, which at the time in the first century, it wasn't Christianity. This was a new form of Judaism, is what it was. These were Jews who followed Jesus. That was basically a messianic form of Judaism. Okay. They didn't want to keep losing it. So they had somebody who was working for them. What would stop the Jewish hierarchy from pulling Paul aside and saying, we don't care what happens to the Gentiles, because the Gentiles to us are no better than pagans. And so what we would like you to do is we'd like you to insert yourself and make this religion a religion of the Gentiles. Okay? And in doing so, it will stop Jewish people from converting. Because we want you to take it to the pagans, which we knew he did, because he was going into the Greco-Roman Empire and he was converting people who spoke and wrote in Koine Greek, which is why the New Testament is written in Koine Greek. It was written by people who grew up in the pagan empire under Roman and Greek rule. Those are the only people that would have known how to write Koine Greek that well enough to write a book. Okay? Right. So think about this. So think about this. If that's the case, then how do you trust what Paul even said? Because if Paul was an insert, and I'm not saying that this is true, but I want you to think about the possibility that might be true. It makes you question everything that you know about the New Testament.
All right. We've kind of gotten way off topic, but so Real, don't think of these things like these are things that have happened. These are things that you guys do as a religion. Go think about that science stuff we were telling you about. These things are real and these things are happening. They contradict what your Bible tries to tell you about them.
Let me ask you this: would the Rock of Horad convince you?
No, you mean that rock that is split down the middle? No, that's not convincing. Anything based on that.
Oh.
Like,
okay.
Like, here's the thing.
We have a rock here in Georgia called the Butt Rock that's split down the middle. That doesn't mean
the conversation, man.
I appreciate you. Have a good one.
But just think about this for a second, right? What is the more likely scenario? That actually happened, or that people saw a rock and made up a story around it?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's probably what happened. All right, Newsom, sorry about that. Are you over 18?
I'm 23.
Perfect. And do you want to talk about one of the points in the background?
Good or real Christians being science denial. I want to touch on the whole basis of what y'all were talking about earlier. Would that be considered science denial? Would that be in that category?
Which particular part earlier are you talking about?
I guess what Real was talking about.
You can talk about science denial as a whole. I'm sure you can get to the point you wanted to make.
Denying evolution.
Okay. Oh no, I don't deny evolution. Evolution is a theory that I do acknowledge. I don't believe that something can't just come from anything. But I do believe what y'all were saying about the mutations. That is possible. But even mutations come from something. They don't just appear. So a mutation is something comes from original form of something. It just can't just appear. Like it doesn't. It's not the theory that something came from nothing. It came from something. Mutation came from something. Like the gene, what he was talking about with DNA. The DNA is the original being, and that mutation came from off of that DNA. So that's not considered evolution unless your definition of evolution is something coming from something.
Here's the thing, though, Newsom. We have actual evidence of evolution in real time that we can actually observe, right?
This isn't even evolution. It's
right. That's why I said I totally agree.
Right.
This is abiogenesis.
Right, but that's what I'm trying to say is like this, what you're describing doesn't fit into what we're talking about. What we're talking about is progressions over time, over a vast amount of time, usually, through mutations, and then also on top of that, natural selection. It's a multi-pronged thing that happens.
And mutations come about from, like, it's just random. Random mutations, that's what they call them. It's part of...
Right, I'm not denying it.
It is existing genetic material that gets mutated.
I acknowledge
He's right in that.
Yeah, I acknowledge that. I acknowledge the fact that mutations do happen. I'm not saying they're not random. I never said that they have to be formed through a process. What I'm saying, like the fact that they are random, I understand that. I totally get that. But I'm saying the fact that mutations have to originally come from something, right? The mutations.
So you're talking about the origin of all things that are as far as
abiogenesis. Yes.
Yeah, that's
exactly. You got my thought process. You got it.
So you need to study abiogenesis then. If you believe in evolution, you can I mean, not to say that there aren't or haven't been people in history who believed in evolution who didn't necessarily acknowledge abiogenesis. But the problem is science has progressed to seamlessly include abiogenesis as part of evolution. So if you believe in evolution, if you study abiogenesis, you'll see where the connection lies, and it will answer your question about the origin of it.
Yeah, but in fairness, there's substantially more evidence for evolution than abiogenesis.
Right, I agree.
I still accept it as the most plausible explanation, but it's not on the level of evolution as far as evidence is concerned.
Yeah. I am feeling some promising stuff with the stuff they just found on those meteors. The building blocks.
Yeah, the aminos and lipids.
Yeah, I am pretty excited about the fact they found that. That's pretty cool, I thought. The water that came with it too, that was pretty awesome.
When I was pre-med at one time, and before I changed majors, but when I took biology class, the first thing they go over in like collegiate biology, just biology 101, is they go over the two like leading theories of abiogenesis, which is, you know, like just like from like, I guess, large energy like being introduced into like actual natural, you know, elements that are within our atmosphere. So like a lightning strike, or they said like volcanic eruptions or heat vents at the bottom of the ocean, and the other one is an asteroid like holding these, you know, like biological materials.
What's that called? Some spermia. What's it called?
I'm explaining the face. My dog has just decided he wanted to make.
What's that called though? When it comes to an asteroid, something spermia, cosmospermia, or what's it called when it comes from space?
Yeah.
No, when it comes from space, it's called something.
I'm not sure for the actual like
term.
Panspermia?
Something like that. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I'm trying to think too.
Where bacteria comes from space. Yeah, like it'd be introduced to our atmosphere from like an asteroid or a rock.
I'm not gonna lie, I totally get it. I get what y'all was saying. These are some valid thoughts. What makes me think even more is the fact that, I mean, the whole point of evolution is understanding the fact that what my confusion is, right, is the arguments presented. I've heard people say that evolution in simple terms is the fact that something can come from nothing. Do y'all agree with that?
No.
Nothing can come from something.
Evolution is change over time.
Valid. So then that's the whole definition of mutations.
Hold on. Okay. Newsom, we have never had any type of example of nothing. There's never been nothing that we know of. So the only people who think that something came from nothing is when Christians say that to us. Nobody believes something came from nothing. That's not how any of it works.
Well, no, I don't. That's why I wanted to ask y'all what was y'all's definition of, because I've actually been on some of these panels and heard. I think Mac Luster probably remember me because I've been on a panel with him like maybe 2 times or 1 time, but I've been on some of these panels with some of these people. I've heard their thoughts, and they believe the fact that even them not being Christian, they believe that something can come from nothing. And y'all sound pretty intellectual. I just wanted to know your thoughts before I assume that y'all believe that's what evolution is.
Here's the thing. Christians believe something came from nothing. They think their God just popped everything out of existence, out of nothing, like with the word, literally. There was nothing in the book, even though the thing says waters, but they usually say nothing was there. And atheism isn't a monolith. Like, this is scientific stuff, so it could vary person to person, but most who understand at least some of the science will tell you that this is what we believe. But like, on average, it's not a monolith. So not all atheists go with everything that's in science.
Right. That's why I wanted to get your thoughts. I'm starting to understand the fact that I don't want to condescend to say that there are smarter people than other people, but there are more valid thinkers than other people, if you get what I'm saying. Like, there's more intellectual thinkers out there. But
going beyond evolution, because if you're dealing with you're dealing with those 2 theories of abiogenesis, that is something that's happening here on this planet. Even if it comes from outside the planet, it's still something that is being introduced from a physical universe, right? If you're talking about nothing, you're going back to like what most people are trying to refer to as the Big Bang, and that's and the Big Bang has, like I told the last gentleman, it's the Big Bang just by itself as an explanation of everything is out of fashion as far as study. It's gone it's gone beyond that.
Right.
It's gone to this kind of Big Bang going into a great fizzle where atomic structures are separated to the point that they don't rub up against each other, so thereby there's no heat or matter created. But they're still floating subatomic particles floating in space. They're just too far apart from each other to create anything.
Right.
And then at some point, one of those particles becomes unstable, And then when it comes unstable, another Big Bang happens. And that keeps repeating itself
Exactly.
over and over and over again, infinitum. And not only that, but in the deeper parts of the cosmos, far beyond where we can see, because light can't travel to us fast enough for us to see it, that there are other Big Bangs happening over and over and over again, infinitum. That space in itself may very well be infinite.
But check
And
this
that's
out.
one of the reasons why. That's one of the reasons why people try to create this idea of God, because they're trying to understand these infinite concepts on a finite mind. You have a finite mind.
Can I say something?
Brooklyn, hold on a second. Are you over 18?
I'm 19.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so do you know the person who pushed the Big Bang Theory? Arnold, I forgot his last name, but he pushed it and he realized, no,
Arnold
the Big Bang
Schwarzenegger?
Theory is not true. What?
I think it's Arnold. What's his name? Arnold Schwarzenegger or something like
No.
that.
Oh.
No.
No, it's...
You're telling me a movie actor made up the Big Bang?
No, it's Arnold Paintless
Oh my
or something. Arnold Paintless? Well,
No,
he
hold on,
realized-
Brooklyn, hold on a second. Who are you talking about? Brooklyn, what are you talking about?
No, his last name's like Arnold Paintiness. I can't pronounce that.
No, it was
No, the
Italian,
host
it was
is face.
like a Roman bishop
His
or
face
something.
dropped.
It was a Roman Catholic. But
No,
he
this guy
didn't-
was pushing it.
Oh, who gives a shit about someone who was pushing it?
Well, he realized it wasn't true. There has to be a mind behind all
Who
this.
is he? Who is he?
Arnold Paintiness or something. I
Give a shit.
What is your
It's
source?
the
for
actor.
this?
Why
Trying
would
to look up the
no offense, but why would I give a shit about some guy you can't even name? who
initial
did not put it forward? It was not his theory. He is just a proponent of it who changed his mind. Who gives a shit?
Right, you agree with the theory.
What's his name?
the initial
but check this
proposal
out,
was
remember
Georges
even-
Lamartrie.
But check this out, though. Even the Big Bang Theory is simply a mutation. What it's saying is something that it was something that caused the Big
Nothing
Bang
created
Theory.
everything.
No,
That's
it's
not what it says.
No, why do you all say this? You all say these things without reading anything about it, and then you're always so wrong.
The Big Bang Theory. So, have you guys ever heard of like the universal background radiation? Do you know what that is?
Nah, enlighten me. What is that? What is that?
So, okay, do you know like do you remember old static like on TVs when like
Yeah.
the channel
The
that
black and
static?
gray, white stuff. Yeah.
Do you know what makes that static? Like you can actually hear the universal background radiation. That's what that static noise is comprised of, and you can actually have evidence of this by using that information in telescopes that read the universal background radiation. They were able to determine that the universe is expanding.
Wow.
That is Big Bang Theory. Now, when you reverse the mathematics of that, it leads into a singularity, which is where we cannot measure anymore any kind of information or data because it all falls apart. It goes into a singularity, much like a black hole. Once you pass the event horizon, you cannot measure it because everything is lost to the black hole because it's so dense.
But check this out,
Doesn't mean
though.
that we know that nothing is in the black hole. It could be that a whole bunch of stuff is in that black hole.
There's all kinds of theories about it. It could be a white hole on the other side of it.
Right, and just like the Big Bang Theory, the singularity at the beginning of the Big Bang Theory, we don't know. We just don't know what was on the other end of that.
And we're okay with
That's
a
what
whole
makes it
other
a theory.
universe. We're fine
That's what
with
makes it
saying
a
we
theory.
don't.
We're not even sure because there was another theory that came out where we had the Big Bang and the Big Crunch, but the problem was based off of some tests that they have determined weren't necessarily truly accurate about blue shift. Was something called blue shift and red shift. Blue shift and red shift is at the edge of our measurable universe. When something is moving, I think it's moving away, it's blue shift, moving toward its red shift. I think that's right. And that they thought that they were seeing some red shift. But now they're saying that's not necessarily the case, that it was just depended on where they were looking, and that may have been a slowing effect of the fact that of our rotation in the universe. Was what's called what would have been called a retrograde of us in relation to that particular edge of the universe. So now they're thinking that it's going to continue to keep going out until every atomic structure splits itself apart so far that there's no atoms bumping up against each other.
And then that's
called the great fizzle.
Yeah.
Okay. So
but that doesn't mean that there's nothing there.
Okay,
it doesn't mean that there's nothing there. It just means that the atoms are so far apart that there's no matter.
Right.
It can't create matter.
Brooklyn. All right. So Brooklyn, the guy you're talking about, he was a Catholic priest and an astrophysicist. But the thing of it is, he even says right here, toward the end of everything, he didn't change his mind about anything. It just says that he refused to make arguments for or against God because he says that he doesn't see a contradiction between what he discovered and proposed and the God he believed in.
Valid. So he believes in both. He thinks both.
I don't even know if that's the same guy she's talking about.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
I mean, I
can't pronounce it. It's got that funny little inflection on it. I don't know what it means.
It's got all those diphthongs and little
Lemaitre. Georges. Yeah, it's Georges Lemaitre.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pronounce it. All you heard me too.
But yeah, he didn't change his mind. It didn't change his opinion. He didn't even equate it to God. He didn't say it disproved or proved it either way.
Sound like a very intellectual thinker.
Actually, I don't think that was the same person.
That's what I'm fucking telling you.
Here, wait, give me one sec, guys.
The guy's name was Arnold.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought you guys were talking about Arnold.
said Arnold. I thought I was thinking Arnold Schwarzenegger when Nixon said it.
Arnold. That sounds like a 20.
The edge of the universe. When you want to know the edge of the universe, you just say, "I'll be back." I'll be back to the center once again.
But nah, check this out though. One thing I wanted to talk about. So I heard y'all say earlier, I'm not trying to get back into the common real hat. Why don't y'all, not even talking about God, why do y'all disprove that Jesus even existed?
Well,
because there's no proof that Jesus existed.
Yeah, you're breaking. But here's the thing: you're breaking into something that's like a small branch that people call mythicism. Some people ascribe to it, some of them don't, and it doesn't matter if you're Christian or if you're atheist or whatever. All those things that's going to vary by person because there's not a whole lot of studying right now. We have people that do study, and I'm starting to lean that way toward mythicism, but like it's not a common held necessarily believe. So
we're saying that the supernatural wizard that is from the Bible that is named Jesus, that was walking on water and flying around.
Well, kind of. But here's the thing, and this gets done with atheism and theism a lot too, which is the middle ground gets ignored.
Yeah.
Right. Not accepting a historical Jesus does not make me a mythicist, because mythicism is a positive claim.
True.
Right. I'm not saying he was made up. I'm saying I don't accept the evidence and the claim that he did exist. There's middle ground there. And to me, it's the most honest position.
Wait, hold on.
All right, Bart Ehrman.
Wait, say that you got cut off. Okay, let me understand. You said you're not saying you're not saying he never existed. You're not saying he never existed.
I'm gonna get off really fast. I'll come back.
Okay.
Wait, so you're saying you don't accept? You're not saying he never existed. You just you haven't gotten sufficient evidence to prove the fact that he did. That's what
exists.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. You're right. That is a middle ground. Because understanding the fact, having evidence, but denying that evidence, that would be denying the fact that
Well, you'd have to actually present some evidence. We're not denying anything because nothing's been presented.
Perfect. So now the argument would be, what is your sufficient evidence? What would you accept as sufficient evidence?
I don't.
You'd have to start. Yeah. You'd have to start with a first-person contemporary account. We don't have
dive into that. What do you mean a first-person?
So
the writing by a person who was there at the time.
Because every person that was claimed to be there in that Bible was proven to pretty much not be there.
Not be there.
Yeah.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were not written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They're what we call pseudo-biographical text. They weren't entitled, they weren't given their names attributed to the apostles until 200 years after the books were found by one of the fathers of the church, Irenaeus. But prior to that, those books were unnamed. They also
say so themselves that these are accounts. Yeah. They're not first person. Like it says, this is what we've heard. We're passing on this information.
And we know that they couldn't have been written by Matthew, Mark, Luke. Well, Matthew, Mark, and John specifically. Luke may have been able to know Koine Greek because of where he was from. But Matthew, Mark, and John absolutely would not have known Koine Greek. They would not have been able to write in it. They would not have been able to speak it. They wouldn't have been able to do it. So the problem is they definitely would not have been able to write a book in Koine Greek. These books were written by people who were converts, who had apostolic home churches, and they were written shortly after the deaths of each, at best, shortly after the deaths of each of the apostles, if they were actually attributed to the apostles. We don't know that's the case because Irenaeus was the one that attributed them to the apostles 200 years later.
And the amount they borrow from each other
it's almost verbatim.
Is also really sus.
Yeah, it's almost verbatim in a lot of spots.
I believe that we do have some first person accounts. I mean, well, before I say that, let me separate that. Not of Jesus Christ himself writing these things, but as you were saying, the converts.
Jesus was likely illiterate.
The converts themselves writing about Jesus Christ.
That's not a first-hand account. That
could be.
I can write a book about President Abraham Lincoln, but I was born in 1973, so I was never at anything that President Abraham Lincoln. I can write that book, but that doesn't mean that I am drawing from anything that I actually saw.
But check this out, though. If the person writing the story, if the person writing about the person, and that first-hand account is from the person writing about that person, that is considered a first-person account.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Let me say this, because if I'm writing about you, whether you never wrote or not, if my account of you is found, and there are other accounts, whether the people believe, whether the people
that's not what you have. That's not what you have.
No, because your definition of first-person account is the fact that
the first person has to be contemporaneous. It has to be written at the time that person was alive.
No,
that's a minimum.
What I'm saying is the first-person account is considered written by the first person. Is that correct?
So somebody that you could use as like a first-person account, somebody it lived in the time of Jesus, like the Roman emperors, Augustus, Tiberius, Claudius, Caligula. If any of those guys had said, "Hey, yeah, I totally remember this guy getting put up on a cross," and I told and Pontius Pilate definitely unalived him, then yeah, you would have a first person.
If they had, well, even then, you that could still not be necessarily first person. It would be contemporaneous. But if they're just saying, yeah, I was alive at this time and I heard this was happening, that's not first person.
Now,
right. No, I'm saying we are 2 steps removed from that. Yeah.
And the fact that other people that were there, like the person who like the persons who were ruling in that area of Jerusalem, that they were writing, and that there is no writings. I mean, what does that mean? If we have writings from Roman rule in the area of the Jordanian Valley in what would later become Jerusalem, then what does that mean if we have writings of other things that they were doing, yet that particular part of that particular history is non-existent? It doesn't exist.
But I don't agree with the fact that we need first person account to say whether a specific, I would say, doctrination or ideology is true.
Here's the problem with that.
No. Okay, now you're getting into theology, and that's not... Historicity and theology are 2 different things.
Okay. So, Newsom, the problem with that, though, is when you say that, you're essentially agreeing to the game of telephone, where you're like, hey, these people who came well after this event heard some stories that have been passed down over the last several decades and then wrote it down, and you're expecting that to be accurate enough to base your entire worldview belief on.
Perfect. I would go that route, but now let me detour, right? The reason why I want to detour is because specifically what Jesus teaches is way too exclusive, right? So now let's dive into why I think that he existed, because there are other religions that don't believe in Jesus' teachings, but still acknowledge the fact that Jesus existed, and they have many other gods. How is that even possible? They never have first-person accounts, but they acknowledge the fact that Jesus did exist, but Jesus himself claimed to be exclusive.
What religion?
There's plenty of religions. The Druze, hold on. The Druze religion, because I actually looked into this. It's called
Jewish religion does not acknowledge.
I didn't say Jewish. I didn't say Jewish. It's called D-R-U-Z-E. No, like Druze. Druze religion. There's the Druze religion, the Baha'i religion, the Manichaeism religion, Hinduism,
Were any of these founded at the time of Jesus?
Yes, Islam was too. But
Islam was 500 years later. What are you talking about?
The Bible was founded before Islam.
Newsome. You just said a whole bunch of inaccurate things all at once. First of all, Islam came, like Mike said, 500 years after Christianity.
After the fact.
And early Christians didn't even call themselves Christians. That's not what they were. They were just
called the way.
Right. So
that wasn't inaccurate what I said.
It was, because Hindus don't recognize Jesus.
Yeah, they don't.
How don't they recognize Jesus?
Because they don't know who Jesus is. It's not part of their pantheon. It's not part of their religion. They don't recognize him.
That's my point. They acknowledge the fact that Jesus existed.
They are Unitarianists. They are most Hindus are Unitarianists, which means that they acknowledge that the religion exists, and they're not going to fault people for having a particular religious belief, because most Hindus are Unitarianists, which means that they don't want to discount or disacknowledge someone else's belief. That does not mean that they think it's historic. I can tell you that whether or not you disagree or not, considering that at one point I was a Vedantaist who was practicing the Hindu faith, so I can tell you that is the case.
All right, so Newsom, hold on tight. We got other guests. We've been talking with you for a little while. Let's take a break for a minute. We'll come back. All right, May, I think I've talked to you before, have I not?
Yeah, you have. You don't like me very much.
That's all right. We can work on it. Go ahead, pick a topic.
I mean, I've had conversations with you before, so I'm not necessarily adjusting any of these necessary topics. I think it's important to say that historians have acknowledged Jesus' existence. It's just the argument.
That doesn't make it correct.
It doesn't. Let me finish.
No, because you're not about to say that just because historians acknowledge that Jesus lived, it doesn't mean anything, because the evidence in which they're doing so is pretty flimsy. If they want to acknowledge it, that's fine, but they're coming into that as being highly contested now.
They acknowledge his existence.
It doesn't matter. It is being contested now, May. It doesn't matter that they
You wouldn't even let me finish. You don't even know what I'm arguing.
You just said historians agree that.
Yes, I was not done. I was
that part is inaccurate because they no longer.
Why are you so pressed? I've been talking to you like 5
minutes. Because you're not listening.
May, the argument is on both fronts. So your whole thing about the argument is about his divinity is not accurate.
Right. Him being a real person or not doesn't change the fact that there's no.
That's my point.
Divine.
Yes, that's exactly what I was saying.
Then what are you on about?
Because you don't let people finish, and so you're trying to argue with me about something that I didn't say.
Just get past it and say your point.
My point was, to the people that are saying it's not, he was a real person. The argument is whether or not he was saying
you
the things he was saying
don't have evidence of that. You don't have evidence of that.
I mean, Islam.
It doesn't. No, there's no need to just accept it as fact when it's not a proven fact.
Right.
The reason it doesn't get hotly debated is because it doesn't fucking matter.
Right.
Jesus' existence as a historical man does not move the needle on anything.
Yeah, that's my point.
It doesn't matter.
But y'all are trying to say he doesn't exist,
no. But
so.
your point is that it's a fact, and that's not true.
Okay, then let's just move on. If it's
there we go. All right. And Jenny, are you ever 18?
Excuse me. Sorry, I don't know why my profile changed to this. I'm 35, live in California. I don't know why my profile
change your password.
Is it? Do you guys know?
Hacked or something?
I don't think so. I haven't been on in like a few weeks.
Is your name Jenny?
No.
I would try to
You
change
need to go
my
and
password.
edit your profile. Then somebody must have hacked you.
All right. Well, then I'll draw. I don't want to bust you guys if I'm getting hacked. Okay. All right, guys.
All right. Good luck.
That was bizarre.
That's crazy. Wow. So, all right. So, May, so you didn't come up here to talk about anything specific. You just wanted to come up here and what?
Well, I mean, I've talked to you before, and I know that you
Doesn't mean
deny.
anything. I have topics for a reason.
Well, no one's trying. I mean, Trump might be, but I also want to say that Trump doesn't represent Christianity. So
Well, he does. That's why
he doesn't. He's not a Christian.
I am aware of that, but Christian nationals still back him.
Christian nationalism is not a Christian supported by the Christian
Quite
church.
Literally, but it is a Christian.
What Christian church approves of
Doesn't
Christian
the
nationalism?
Christian churches these Christians go to? What are you talking about?
The Christian churches, these what?
The
Church
operation.
denomination.
There are 45,000 denominations, May, and this whole entire Christian
I'm talking about.
thing conforms of several.
Have you ever heard
Why
of
are you
Pastor
so
Greg Locke?
angry?
Because you keep asking these questions when you could very easily look this shit up yourself and
Well,
you
why
expect
don't you
me
look
to
it
do
up?
it
Why
for
don't
you.
you know?
Have you ever heard of Pastor Greg Locke?
Yes. Have you ever heard of Paula White, who is now the White House, who runs the White House religious office?
Selling blessings
Yeah, no,
for $1,000.
like Christians don't agree with that. That's crazy.
Yes, they do, or else they would not be backing this shit.
Have you ever heard of
I don't back that.
Scott's
You don't back
Scott
that.
put sugar on the porridge.
You look at the
Back that at
extremes
all.
and think it's the normal. Like,
I'm
do you
so
look at-
tired. No, I'm so tired of you. No. Here's what I'm tired of, May. You guys sit there. This is why I have this part right here. Good or real Christians, because you guys do this. You'll get up here and say they aren't real Christians, and they'll say you're not real Christians. These Christians over here say all of you are no Christians. There are 45,000 different denominations, and all of you say none of you are the real Christians. So it doesn't matter that you don't agree with it. This is still happening, whether you like it or not, and it's still part of your religion.
It's not part of my
It
religion.
is. It is. It's
Where in the
part of
Bible does it say
Christianity,
that?
whether you like that or not?
No.
So, do you think that all Muslim terrorists represent Islam? Just wondering. Of course you don't, because you're biased.
No, but guess what?
for
Guess what?
the
They're
faith,
Muslims.
yes.
You think they represent the entire?
For the faith, yes.
No, that's not what. But that's not your argument, May. Your argument is they're not Christians.
That's literally.
What? Say what?
Christian nationalism is.
He said what?
The operating term is Christian.
You denying that it exists doesn't make it not happening. Like
Wait, are you guys allowed to say the T word? I just
no, she shouldn't have said that word. No.
Okay.
But, yeah. Hi, Resistance. Are you over 18?
I am.
Okay.
46.
All right. Perfect.
I want you to go look up. I want you to go look up a whole list, but I'm going to give. Well, never mind. I could have given her a whole list of things.
She said, "Look up." She said, "I'm out."
Yeah, I was just waiting for someone to talk about the faith office, but
No, the
there's
faith
this,
office,
group called
well, hold on.
Ziklag, the Seven Mountains Movement.
Right, I was about to say the Seven Mountains Mandate, and
The
Paula
Seven
White
Mountains
is
Mandate,
listed on there.
The Family Foundation that's run by the guy that has a school inside Washington that they made a documentary about called The Family, that installs people in Washington to be Christians in Washington.
Yeah, Mona, she's not arguing against it. It's like,
yeah,
she was.
I was actually coming up to say all of that, but you spoke for me. Okay, but I did want to ask about the good or real Christians being apathetic. I'm trying to understand what you mean.
So a lot of times when I talk to Christians who are more on the progressive side, or even not, they'll say that other Christians who are opposite of their views are not real or not good Christians.
Oh, right.
So
Yeah.
I'm using their own terms on them.
Okay, no, I could relate to that because that was kind of where I was before I left Christianity. I would look at other Christians who were like unkind to others, and I would call them hypocrites. And I'm like, how are they doing that? How are they being so like horrible and telling people they're going to hell and like forcing this, down people's throats and not respecting other people's rights. And, and I was what I would consider a progressive Christian, but I just realized after reading the Bible that I was just doing Christianity wrong. That I just kind of made up a God according to my own values that was loving and kind and respected and had love that was not a toxic love, not a love me or die type. So like, how is it that I have a completely different message? And I realized I did, in fact, have a different message, that the message in the Bible leads.
Right. And part of that's because a lot of people, especially Christians, when they're first taught how to read this Bible, they're usually taught how to read first the New Testament first, and then how to mash it into the Old Testament.
And there are Christians that I am friends with that don't have any problem. They understand where I'm at and that I've moved on. Now, one of my friends passed away last year. His name was Bishop Carlton Pearson. He passed away of cancer last year.
That's your actual friend?
Yeah, and I'm still friends with Jay Baker. Jay Baker is Jim and Tammy Faye's son, so I'm still friends with Jay. And so, but they know that I'm no longer Christian, that I'm no longer a theist at all. And now, of course, Carlton knew before he passed away, but we had no problem with that. We were still able to sit down and have beautiful discussions on philosophy and theology and other things, and it's not an issue. But that's the rarity. You don't find these people very often.
You can find sensible people. Like I realized, I think I was in my 20s when I was sharing an office with somebody, and she was someone I would consider to be a good person. And we were all talking about different things, and she mentioned that she didn't grow up going to church. And I remember being so shocked. Like, what? You didn't go to church? Like, this is me coming, I'm in my 20s. I'm coming out of my, everyone does everything like me bubble, learning about what other people are. And I was just so shocked, and I had to fix my face. Like, okay, don't look so shocked. Like, of course, everybody, not everybody does everything I do. And then it still weighs on me. Like, this was 20 years ago. And I realized then that, okay, you don't have to be Christian to be a good person. Like, and it felt weird that, because it's like, of course you don't. Like, where did I even get that? Because my parents had never said that. They weren't like a super, beating me down with the Bible type of family. And so it's like I picked it up somewhere.
The pastors who sell their church want you to think that, because if they have you thinking that, then what that means is you're going to come back the next Sunday.
I get it, but I'm just saying, like, it wasn't something, I can't remember anyone saying that. Like, my church was not, we shared the
funny how it
with other
seeps in.
faiths.
Yeah,
Right.
it seeps in kind of covert ways. It doesn't.
I remember when I first moved to Georgia. So this was also 20 years ago.
You're in Georgia too.
Yeah, east of Atlanta, and I was talking to this woman, and she's about my age, I think, maybe a little bit younger. And I was talking. The subject came up, and I told her I was an atheist, and she's like physically like taken aback, and she's like, so you're like dead inside?
Wow.
I was like, no, I'm a real living boy.
Like
Pinocchio.
My nephew, when I told him I didn't believe in God, he was like, "But that's like bad luck, isn't it?" Like,
Juju, man, got to get out of here.
Yeah, many people just can't even. But I think I found like the real crux of it is, it's so successful at convincing people that they're worthless without God. And I think that's the real thing that a lot of believers believe. They've accepted that narrative that they are worthless. And you see it in a lot of the practices and a lot of the things they say, you know, the self-degradation and different things. It's like that's really what their belief is.
It's because it's all over that book. It's all over that book.
Right. But in it, they can then believe anything else. You know, because you'll see Christians not just believing in the Bible or Christ, they believe conspiracies and not all of them, because I was a Christian and I didn't believe any of that stuff, but I also never believed that I was a sinner, which is weird. But anyway, those who have really had it beat down that they are worthless without God are susceptible, because it's like they're always looking for anything to fill the void of what they've been trained to think that they're missing.
Well, that and they've also been taught that might makes right. So when you've got people like Trump or whatever, then they're,
I can't stand that when they say, "Who are you to question God?" It's like, is this supposed to be a relationship or not? Like,
my girlfriend, when I was in college, she went to Penn State, and I went to go visit her over a weekend, and she wanted me to go to church with her, and I hadn't been in church in a while, but so I went with her, and when I tell you, it was the most fucking depressing thing. It was a Catholic church, and the whole thing was just like, we are dirt, like, you know, dirty rags and all that, like all of that stuff, like just completely unworthy of anything, but we've got this, you know, person who will save us, etc. It's just like, it was weird, because I'd gone to like Baptist churches and stuff where they're not like so beat you over the head with it, but this was just like, you are all dirt. Like,
was this after you deconverted, Matt?
Oh yeah, I was I want to say in my like early mid-teens, when I was just like, no, this shit ain't it. Like,
I started to try that, but then I got like my family freaked out when I tried that, Mac, and then I sort of went back in.
Like, fine, I believe.
Yeah, like I just had to believe what they believed because I just had to. Like,
yeah, fortunately, my parents were pretty lax about it. So,
well, it's funny. I thought my parents were too, but then when I came out as an atheist, my mom lost her shit, and I did not expect it. Their whole family lost her shit. Like, it was weird. I did not expect it.
But
How
then,
old
like,
were you?
But then, like, you got Michael, that's like a Satanist, but that's okay.
Yeah, they don't.
How old were you, Dugald, when?
So I, like Mac, tried in my 14, 15, 16-year stage, but that didn't work out because my family freaked out, so I tried again. So I didn't fully let go of the faith until I was probably in my mid to late 20s.
But you personally didn't believe it.
And any belief in and outside of that, like paranormal stuff, I didn't let go until probably just before I turned 40. So I was still in my 30s before I let that stuff go.
Yeah, it's a I kind of blew past it pretty quick, because I'm only coming up on 2 years, but like I've always kind of, I guess, been a skeptic, and I wasn't an evolution denier. I hid from it because I had a feeling that it would challenge my belief, and I'm an avoidant person. I don't confront things, and so I just like kind of hid from it because I like science. And I had a feeling that it would probably provide a more compelling story, and I wasn't ready to confront that yet. So I just kind of, blurred, it's like I knew it.
To hurt you.
What'd you say?
I said you didn't want science to hurt you.
Right, and it's so crazy because I got a bachelor's degree in science. It's like, how did I fit in?
How did you let that happen?
Science.
Like, how'd you let that happen?
I still can't believe, like, I went to the Smithsonian last year and I had the time of my life, like spending 5 hours in the exhibit, like just looking at, all the Homo erectus and, just like I just nerded out over there. And, because now I've like done deep dives, like getting all into it, but I just I look at it and I'm like, how did I just deny this all this time?
Definitely the God belief I lost toward my mid to late 20s, but the belief in anything like spiritual, supernatural, that kind of stuff, because I wanted to believe in ghosts so bad for the longest. So it wasn't until like my late 30s I finally gave it up. Like, I'm even still subscribed to like some like ghost hunter YouTube channels and stuff, just because I find them amusing now for different reasons.
Is it like fun for like? Were you like someone who just like, just like you enjoyed the wonder of it, or?
Yeah.
More like I still had hope that there was an after, even if it was this weird, whatever this haunting kind of thing might be. Like, I think I still wanted to believe there was an after.
Yeah, I think that might be why I came out fast. Like, I just really never cared about an afterlife. And I
don't
lost
now.
people early.
Yeah.
I mean, but like ever, like even as a Christian, like the idea of heaven never appealed to me. Like just worshiping and praising forever and
Right.
like a
Well, and
zombie.
even that, you wouldn't have gotten to do that. As a Gentile, all of us would have been being.
Well, I didn't know that. Like, because people would talk, and then hell, it never, like, I just didn't believe it because I made up my own God, that God, loves me and he wouldn't, that's a terrible thing to do. Like, he wouldn't do that to me.
Right.
So it was just something that I couldn't reconcile. It was a huge conflict with the characteristics that I thought God possessed, that God was loving and just. It just didn't even compute that was ever a real, I was like, that's not a thing I have to worry about.
Right.
So in the afterlife, it just never.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
It's funny because like you ask them like, what is heaven? Like, sell me on heaven, right? And the best they can come up with is like this eternal peace and like, no more pain, right? That's like the two biggest ones I hear. They're like, okay, fine, but like, my thing also has that. Like, no pain in the ground.
Exactly. Like I love naps.
Yeah, but Jesus.
Like I love to sleep.
Yeah,
I mean,
give me that dirt nap.
Right.
Right. I mean, the idea of things just being over, it just doesn't bother me. Like,
no.
I like the idea that the atoms that make up me will break down what is, and what's left will just return to the rest of the universe like it always was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with, here's the thing. I've always said, I don't care if people have a faith. If you want to have a faith in an afterlife and all that kind of stuff, great, fine. If that's what brings you joy and comfort, but like, keep it at home.
Right. Don't yell at the parade that I'm watching, like move out of my way. Like
I keep trying to tell them, like, there would not be very many, if at all, any atheist lives or Deconstruction lives or any of that stuff. And if they just kept it at home.
Right. Just believe it for yourself. If it brings you comfort, then, but like I would have never been the one to come up here and talk about my faith. Like, by the time TikTok came or any, out of my 20s, I was already like aware that there's other beliefs. I'd even explored other belief systems. And I just realized what I chose is, I was like, okay, this is just more convenient. I don't feel like having to redo everything and learn a whole new construct. Like, I guess I'll stick with this one. But I accepted that other people, that their religion was just as valid as mine. Like, I didn't look at it as mine was the true religion. And my church even like shared we would do different things with this one Jewish synagogue. Every MLK day, we do a preacher swap or a rabbi swap where they would do the sermon on Sunday, and my church pastor would do the sermon at their synagogue on Friday. And it was just like, I don't know.
Yeah, I get that. I get it. I get that. Let's see, Christians, other, yeah, I might.
Break.
Oh, wait, I wasn't.
Hello. Doing dishes, so I forgot I was in queue.
Sorry, Virgo, I didn't mean to invite you up. I thought it was in the the request Monday. Anyway, hey, Blake, how are you?
Hello. Pretty good. How are y'all doing?
Not too bad. Sorry for making you hang out for a while. We're just really heavy on the friendlies for a minute. I wanted to.
Oh, no worries. I think I've requested up around alligator bacon being brought up, and that it does exist. And it's not good.
I forgot about the alligator bacon. Oh, Yeah, Damien, you're right. The lives wouldn't be centered around Christians if they just stopped legislating their beliefs. Well, I would actually go a little bit further and tell them to keep it off billboards in my front door too. But
right,
one problem
everywhere
at a
you
time.
go.
Right, one problem at a time, though.
I had a question for everybody, just because, like, what you guys were just talking about a little bit ago, it reminded me, like, when I was little, like, and it might have been because of this little, like, cartoon that they showed me that, like, really scared me about Jesus. But, like, whenever I would look, because I went to a Catholic church, and they had a very realistic depiction of Jesus, like a statue of him on the cross, like, all bloody and beaten up and stuff, and it just scared me. Like, I never felt like love or any kind of like peace or solemnness or anything.
They conflate the words love, respect, and fear for being the same thing.
I think you're supposed to feel guilt.
Like
you put him up there,
right?
Yeah, guilt too.
I just remember being little and being like, no, that thing's scary.
Like my for example, my dad, like, he used to spank and all that kind of stuff. Like, I spent most of my childhood and teen years terrified of him. I didn't love him. I was scared of him. Like, it's not the same thing.
No.
I thought it was because at the time that I learned about it, like it was similar to the time that I was learning about like civil rights and stuff, and Dr. King, and that he unalived, doing this thing, trying to get things better for Black people and poor people. And so I looked at that as like what it meant to die for someone, that you really, one thing, you really did die. And then you also, were like, it wasn't like a blood sacrifice ritual. It was just like you were trying to do something good and people didn't like it, but you kept pushing on anyway. And then you were brave enough to keep going, and then they got you. And so when people were always like, Jesus died for you, I looked at it like that. Like, he was really doing something for us. And in the wake of all of that, he unalived. I didn't know that it was like a virgin sacrifice. Like, and it's embarrassing, because I would watch every resurrection play. Like, I would study it. Like, okay, I'm finally going to get it now, because it just never made sense to me until I saw it as that. And I grew up watching Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So I was always repulsed by the idea of human sacrifices, just unnecessary.
Oh, the heartbeat.
Right, pulling the heart off, Kali Ma, like,
yes.
like I can say the whole
That's
thing.
like a shared trauma we all have from that era.
Right.
On, guys.
It came on a lot.
Nephew, good night. Talk to you tomorrow.
But yeah, so I've always been repulsed by that idea. And it's embarrassing that I didn't really equate that to what I was doing until I was in my 40s. That all this time, like, it was celebrating an actual human virgin sacrifice. And
now, like,
it wasn't that,
that you put it like that. Like, now I'm thinking, like, when I was little, if it was like a statue of like Dr. King, just like looking, stoic or something.
That's usually how he was depicted and stuff when we see it.
Right. Like, that would have been way more like inviting to me. And like, as a little kid, like, I was just I was watching this really cute video of my nephews. They just learned about Dr. King and about Rosa Parks and stuff, which I was surprised that they're still teaching that in schools. But like, they were explaining, like what Dr. King did and like how everything was, like people were being treated bad, and he kind of changed it. And Rosa Parks was the reason why it all started, and I just like find it very inspiring. And I don't get that from I never got that from the Jesus story.
Mm-hmm.
What's funny is I always saw Jesus as a sacrifice, as a human sacrifice. It was one of the things that always perplexed me growing up, because I could not for the life of me understand, like, why do they want to, like, why? Why would God want to sacrifice his own kid, and why would all these people just want to brutally harm someone like this? Like what? And it was intentional. So it was like, what the like? It just didn't make sense to me.
So it just didn't make sense, but you always knew that it was. So what did you think sacrifice meant?
To be honest, they kept thinking the sacrifice for the longest, because of what they told me, was the sin itself that he took for everyone, not the actual act of his death or the torture that went through beforehand. It was always about the sin itself that he sacrificed. He sacrificed himself for that sin. That himself part was always a gloss over. You know what I mean?
Right.
They always focused on the sin part that he gave himself up for. Not
right.
So to me, then my brain, because of that, it didn't connect that he actually sacrificed himself. It was the sin that was the.
But also, I'm sure, like, if anyone heard that, they wouldn't correct you.
No.
Because it's like whatever it takes for you to just still call yourself a Christian and do the performance, they're fine with you believing it however it makes sense to you. You know, like it does, like no one knew that this is how I thought. Right. You know, because I was still going to church and I was still volunteering and, you know, I was involved and I never spoke out against it. And no one knows what, you know, but if you really talk to people, even growing up in the same church, no one believes it the same way because everyone kind of builds their theology off of who they are as people.
Yeah.
Like I was watching this video and this lady was saying that she's got it down to a science where if she knows how your personality is, she can tell what kind of God you have. And they'll all be Christian. But depending on your personality, she knows what type of way that you see God.
That's
and
crazy.
I thought that was so like she had me down to a T. She was like, if your God is benevolent and is a social justice warrior and kind and, you know, is open to LGBTQ, I can tell that you're likely a woman and you could be a nurse. And I'm a nurse. So I was like, wow, that's spot on.
It's really funny the things that we believe when we're in there. All right,
right.
Appreciate you. Bye, buddy. All right, but yeah, it is weird that it's a very strange thing that they put themselves through on that. I don't get it. I don't get it. The fact that all these people would always profess to me that they read this Bible and all these things, and every passage they read always did sound great and wonderful. But then when I finally did read it in my early 20s, I mean, for the first and only time, I'm trying like hard to do the second time. It's just so tedious. But the first time when I first read it, like I read these stories and I thought, this God's kind of a dick.
Yes. Oh my God.
He's a monster. He rampages through everything he touches.
I felt that too. And I read about that early, like in my, well, I mean, you know, okay, not that early, but like in my 20s, I made an attempt because I felt like I was looking at other people in the church and they just seemed way more into it than I was. Mm-hmm. And I was like, like I don't want to just be here. Like I'm a person who likes to dive in and, you know, really get in there. And so I'm like, you know, let me really read this. And so I started from the beginning and I made it through all the terrible stuff. And I'm like, this is an asshole. like, what am I doing?
And what's funny is, like, before I read it for the first time, like, I actually researched the history of the religion itself, like how it, you know, all started and all that kind of stuff. And I learned how it was originally a pantheon of gods, and then how it became Baal, sorta, and then Yahwehism started, and then it progressed into Judaism, and then it progressed into Christianity and then Islam. Like, it's just been mutated. And it originally started with multiple gods, and I kept thinking, if Yahweh is a minor god in this pantheon, how the fuck is the Bible right?
Well, even that he tells you to not worship any other gods. Like,
right.
So there are more than. Like, the point was that you were supposed to be the one
Right.
Like, like you just saying no is it just has to be me.
Yeah.
Like that's weird.
It's just, especially when, like I said, he was a minor storm god, war god, or metallurgy god, depending on who you talk to. In an older pantheon, they just kind of took on his mom as his wife, and then got rid of her too, and like absorbed some of the other ones, made the other ones angels. Like all this stuff just kept inflating. Like you kept seeing these deities in the Bible, but they were turned into other things, like angels or fallen spirits or
a grove of trees.
Yeah, or a whole grove of trees. Like it just was so weird to me. And then so when I read it, I was just like, wait a minute, ain't none of this right. Now, already the history then made it sound weird, but now that I've read it combined with that, it just none of this is right. It's all just one big myth that's been so changed and just mutated to unrecognizable. Almost unrecognizable.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing. Because, I mean, the snake, like, as far as we know, that was another god. It could have been Enki. It could have been various other gods. Could have been, and it could have been a number of things. Like, wasn't a real snake. We know that.
Right. He's walking around and talking and
just walking in and talking and seducing. Like,
and even like with that, like when I really like this was the time when I finally was like, okay, I'm just gonna read this. Like, because the first time I did feel that he was just an asshole, and so I walked away from reading it because I'm like, this isn't having the effect that I was looking for. Like I was looking to be drawn in, and I'm being repulsed. And so I'm like, I'm not gonna want to stay at this. I'm not gonna want to keep doing this if I keep reading this Bible.
Right.
So, and I think I kind of got like not pushback, but I remember telling some people at my church one Sunday, I was like, does it seem like the God of the Old Testament is an asshole or kind of evil? I didn't say asshole, but I was like, is he evil? And I must have gotten like, oh, don't worry about that, or like something where they made me feel like I shouldn't be talking about this at church. So I just like kind of put it away and didn't talk about it anymore. And I just focused on the curated content that my pastor presented, so I can still be in the club.
It kind of felt like when I first read it, it almost felt a little bit like Jesus had decided to like take over for God and like push him back to the back, and was like God was about to get put out the pasture, basically, because like he kept speaking for it and doing all the things, and God himself very rarely ever actually like interjected like he did in the Old Testament. It was almost just like, here's this wrathful, vengeful thing, and then he just got real tired, so he sent his son down, and his son's gonna handle it all now. We're done. He's not around anymore. We're done. Fuck this shit. He'd had enough. We're over it. Like I don't know. It's a funny thing. It's a funny thing. The things you come to realize after you come out of the faith. Like, what the fuck was I thinking?
I'm just glad it finally kicked, because when I went back and read it, at this point I was just like, with the whole, political climate, and I'm a nurse. I do disaster preparedness. I was very involved in my healthcare system with COVID, and just dealing with all of the conspiracy theories, even with people who are in my profession. Like it was professionally like problematic, like the stuff I had to deal with as an educator. And so I'm like, how is it that people are so prone to believing things that aren't real? And, when you research it, it points to people who have faith beliefs, people who practice believing things without evidence. And, who is that? Well, believers. And so you can believe anything if that's what you make a habit of doing. So I just did a deep dive. I'm like, let me read this. And the first, I was deconverted before, the third chapter. But looking at the character Satan, there's literally nothing he does. He just is telling, he's like a tour guide. Hey, this tree over here.
And he never does anything that God doesn't tell him to do.
Right. And that was the first thing that made me feel how manipulative it is, because it says, the most cunning of all the beasts and then it never describes any cunning behavior. And so I thought that type of literary trick was like very manipulative to try to get the reader to already be biased against the character without like describing a reason. It just tells you it's the most cunning amongst all the, so then you know that you're supposed to not like
Look at this
him.
lying bastard.
And you don't know why.
Yeah, like, right, exactly.
Let's see what he lies about.
This lying asshole. That's exactly what it felt like. You did kind of feel that sense of like, fuck this guy, lying to me this whole time. It sucks. All right. I do want to clear out a little bit because I think I'm going to wrap it up and we're going to go raid Ty the Goddess here in a little bit. But I do want to talk to Pax, Mr. Smokey, and Blake real quick since they are friendlies who wanted to come up and say something.
All right. Well, thanks for having me up.
I'm going to jump down too.
All right. I'll see you all over there.
All right.
Alrighty. Bye.
Hi. All right. So, all right, Blake, do you have anything you want to talk about before we go?
Oh, not much. I was just going to come up and add some color to that alligator conversation and then some science terms later. So
I appreciate you.
Oh, no problem.
Right, Mr. Smokey, you good? Do you want to say anything?
Oh, just when you guys were talking about like basically the afterlife and stuff like that, it made me it's something that I've pondered a lot, is that Christians often put too much focus, I think, on the afterlife and where they think that and so that they're not concerned about fixing and helping things to be better here and now, in this life. And so, yeah, I don't know, that was kind of the point, but by the time that, it kind of moved past that. So,
yeah, I appreciate you coming up, buddy. Next time, maybe we can get you to stay on a little longer. You can actually join in. But everybody who's left, go raid Ty the Goddess, please. Ty the Goddess, spelled Tye, the Goddess, all one word. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Take it easy.